Support for Celebrity Memoir Book Club comes from Expedia. Everyone should have somewhere to look forward to, and that is the idea behind Unpack 2025. Expedia, Vrbo, and Hotels.com have put together a report of all of the best destinations to visit in 2025.
I am so excited. I'm actually taking Ashley for her birthday to a music festival in Barcelona. I will be using Expedia.com to try to find the hotel to treat my lady right. Me and Mac are going to go to Colombia and Medellin. I think I'm pronouncing that right, which is a city that I truly know nothing about. So I've been using Expedia.com to look up the different hotels, the different areas. They have advice for fun things to do. And it's amazing reading guest reviews. It really gives me a sense of what I'm actually getting beyond just the photos.
Get out of town and experience JOMO, the joy of missing out with Unpack 25. Explore travel trends and find your somewhere to look forward to at expedia.com/unpack25.
I'm Claire Parker.
And I'm Ashley Hamilton. And this is Celebrity Memoir Book Club, the podcast where we fill in the blanks that are already filled in by someone writing about their own life. But we say, nope, we can talk about it even more.
Good one.
Claire, if you were to write a memoir about your life, what would you title last week's chapter?
Exhaustion. A mother's tale. I was the single mother of 2 little dogs. And by single, I do mean I was in a home with Mac was there and his 4 friends were there. So there was actually 6 adults to 2 dogs.
It was kind of like 3 men and a baby, but also 4 men and a mom.
I do think they held me back in some ways. I will say retroactively, this idea that would be a really good time to have Bug over. I am like now thinking about the fact that she's scared of strangers. And it was a lot to put her in a place with 4 men that she had never met before. But she did
really
great.
Liked.
Of course, she loves men.
Yeah.
She's like constantly seeking out a strong father figure.
That's so true.
But no, we had a great time. Tuesday, 2:30 p.m., I was already drinking wine. I became a wine mom so fast. I couldn't believe it. I was having margaritas. I was having like a beer. My friend Sophia came over Sunday night and Ashley had already come to pick up Bug. So I just had my parents' dog Bailey. And I was like, should we open up a bottle of something? And she's like, I'm okay. I have work in the morning. And I was just like, oh, totally. Okay. It's interesting. So that's something we all have to look forward to. When I become a mom, I will become an alcoholic.
Cool. Just like Brie from Desperate Housewives.
Yeah. I never saw that show.
Oh.
But just like, I think a lot of your mothers, am I right? I think that's like a big thing, like the drinking mom.
Yeah.
The drinking mom's glass. It's
the fun, lush mom.
I only have a glass of wine a night, but that glass is the bottle. It's a big glass. Is it wine o'clock? I think so. I only start after I've woken up.
It's 5 o'clock somewhere.
I'm going to do that thing where I'm going to eat very little so I get drunker faster.
Yay.
I'm going to be the tautest you've ever seen me and just so dizzy.
Falling down drunk.
I'm going to be in Pilates, just like 99% muscle and also like no sense of where the ground is.
With a Stanley Cup full of Pinot.
I just top off my water.
That's nice.
What about you, Ashley? How was your weekend? If you were a celebrity and you were to write a memoir, what would last week's chapter be?
Sorry to hear about you being a fun, drunk mother of 2, but that's the aunt that I've always wanted to be. That's the aunt that I thought I'd become, the aunt that swoops in from New York City and is like, let's get you a tattoo, baby. But instead,
literally, baby, Shayla turned 1.
Yeah. Okay. So my aunt growing up was a teacher and she would only get us books as presents. She like didn't believe in getting toys as presents. She would only buy us books. And I was like, more books. And then some of those books I really liked. And a lot of those books
shaped
kind
you
of
to the woman
me.
You are.
And I am like, I can't believe I was born to be like a fun, drunk, saucy city aunt. And I'm forced to be the book aunt because no one else is buying this baby books.
Blame George W. Bush.
I kept on like kidnapping her into a corner and being like, you will watch me read you a book. Meanwhile, like everyone's getting her toys that light up and like shoot fireworks out of them. And everyone was like, this is perfect for inside. I'm just like, please look at the page. Clifford, he's a big red dog. Don't you think that's cool? She slapped me in my face. She said, no, I don't think that's fucking cool.
One day when she grows up to be the largest arms dealer in Texas, people are going to look at you and say, remember when we all got her fireworks and explosives and you tried to get her books and divert her from her passion? You were such a bad aunt.
And I'm going to say, well, you know how she's able to read the books that she double does?
She also does books in this arms dealing scenario.
Who's doing the books in her arms dealing operation? You think every arm stealing
does
operation?
the books, like the number books.
The number books.
I thought when you said she's double doing the books, like she's also on the side an author too.
No. She's double doing the books. Like there's one for
Do you
the government.
see why it was so confusing? Because we were also talking about books.
But if she doesn't learn any books, then she's not going to know how to do those books.
Are you working with her on numbers?
No, but I will once she gets done with words.
Anyway, should we get into this week's episode?
Oh boy, should we?
Do you want to trigger warn it at all?
Okay. Yeah. Trigger warning. This book is devastating.
If you're not trying to cry on your way to work or at your desk or with your baby that you're breastfeeding right now.
Yeah. And
ladies, so what if the baby gets a little drunk, right? That's going to be me. I'm going to be like, yeah, my kid's fun. It's been drunk since it was born.
You got to start their tolerance young.
I've been putting a little bit of wine in my tummy since it was in there too.
I can't believe how much you're like not even a drinker and you're going to be the drunkest mom in town.
People will be like, oh, you must have been wild in your 20s. I've been like, no, I was actually famously so boring in my 20s. It wasn't until I had a life to care for that I started being like, has anyone done Molly today?
Oh, similar to our friend here in this book.
Oh, okay. That actually sobered me up. I don't want to be like Lisa Marie Presley.
Anyway, so a trigger warning, I guess, for suicide, depression, drug use and addiction.
Child molestation.
Elvis Presley, trigger warning.
All of it. So it's called From Here to the Great Unknown.
So this book, very fascinatingly, was written by both Riley Keough and her mother, Lisa Marie Presley, who is the daughter of Elvis Presley. So Lisa Marie had started sitting down to work on a memoir before she passed. So she was recording tapes of her life story. And she had asked Riley, her daughter, to help her work on it. And after she passed away, Riley went through the tapes and put it into the format of a memoir and then added in additions.
Which is a format that we've kind of seen before. I think Diane
Keaton did it
a little bit by using her mom's diary entries. What other mother-daughter?
Oh, Sally Field had like some elements.
Yeah, it is really interesting to be like, you cannot understand me without understanding my mother. And I think for the Lisa Marie and Riley relationship, like they're such a codependent, enmeshed family that it really is true. And I think, as you'll see, I mean, this book begins after Lisa Marie has died, which is kind of unique for a memoir.
Yeah.
Like, how do you tell your story once? I mean, besides Cicely Tyson, who I think had her book come out like a month or two before she died, it's very hard to write a book with the full picture. So for Riley to be writing this after her mother's passed away is kind of surreal. But it adds all this beautiful context about like the good she brought to people. And sometimes you read these books and you're kind of like, well, what was other, like, I don't know. It just added a really soft, tender loveliness to the book that I thought added to it. The early parts of the book are mostly her voice. In the tape, she speaks at length about her Graceland childhood, the death of her father, the dreadful aftermath, her relationship with her mother, her difficult teen years. She's frank and funny about my father, Danny Keough. She talks openly about her relationship with Michael Jackson. She's painfully candid about her later drug addiction and about the perils of fame. There are times, too, where it sounds like she wants to burn the world to the ground. Other times, she displays compassion and empathy, all facets of the woman who was my mother.
What mattered most to me was feeling like the end result sounded like her, that I could instantly recognize her in the pages, and I can.
The greatest strength for this aspect of the book was also one of my mother's biggest flaws. She was constitutionally incapable of hiding anything from me. I hope that in telling her story, my mother will resolve into a three-dimensional character, into the woman we knew and loved so dearly.
So it starts with Lisa Marie's childhood, growing up with Elvis in Graceland. I felt my father could change the weather. He was a god to me, a chosen human being. He had this thing where you could see his soul.
She talks about like just understanding what a presence he was. And as a little girl who, one, already is your father. And I think children, they're looking up to their father like so intensely already. But then for your father to be Elvis, who then you're looking around as a child. And then children are so perceptive that like they're noticing that all the other adults in the room are also looking up to her father. And her father's moods did control the universe that he built within Graceland and with all of its fame.
And when she was with him, they rarely left Graceland. So he had created this world, as we know from Priscilla's book and from Linda Thompson's book, where he would create this kind of fortress for himself where everything ran inside of his home.
Make him happy, make him laugh. That was my whole world. If I knew something was funny to him, I would do it as much as I could to get some mileage out of it to entertain him.
He gave me as much of himself as he possibly could, more than he could give anyone else, and yet I feared him too. He was intense. If I ever upset him or he was mad at me at all, I felt that everything was ending.
So then she gets into, on the other hand, her relationship with her mother from a young age. And she says, I was a pain in her ass immediately, and I always felt she didn't want me. She says that her mother had told her, actually, Priscilla Presley, whose book we read, and I don't remember this from her book, but maybe it was in there, that when she got pregnant, she considered throwing herself off a horse to force a miscarriage, that she didn't want to gain weight. She didn't want to have this baby.
I remember that she did not want to gain weight when she was pregnant.
But that she kind of could tell already the way that this was going to change her relationship to Elvis, and that she did not want the baby.
Because we know Elvis was extremely critical of Priscilla's physicality and the way he viewed her as like a mom / wife / baby.
Riley remembers looking at her mom as a young woman and just how beautiful she found her. My mom fundamentally felt she was broken, unlovable, not beautiful. There was a profound sense of unworthiness in her, and I could never really figure out why.
So upstairs at Graceland was just Elvis's room and Lisa Marie's room, and very few people were even allowed on the second floor. And her room was through his room. So she had to go through Elvis's room to get to her bedroom. And he was nocturnal. We know that he would stay up all night and then sleep all day.
Even as a child, I knew this was super special. Nobody, aside from maybe a girlfriend, had one-on-one access like that. Upstairs at Graceland, just my room and his room, a sanctuary to be with him. And she really like worshipped her father. And it's so interesting reading the beginning of this book and seeing the ways that she was like, how lucky was I to get to spend time with my dad? And you're sitting there going, I don't know, that feels like par for the course. Like, I get that a lot of people don't even get that with their fathers, that there's a lot of bad dads out there. But it was kind of crazy to me to read this book as she's looking back on it as an adult, and for her to like not even question the fact that she felt so lucky to even get to be his daughter when like they chose to have her. But then I got to the mom and I was like, oh my God, Priscilla was worse.
Priscilla shouldn't have had a baby.
Yeah.
Because Priscilla then spent her like late 20s and 30s trying to find herself. However, she was already a mom at that point, and so that led her daughter to feel extremely rejected. So with Elvis, there was absolutely no structure. So she had to go back to her mom's house in LA for school. And she would go there during the school year, and then she would go to Graceland over the summer, and she hated it. She's like, I felt like a part of me was dying when I was away from Graceland.
And it's like in Graceland, she was allowed to do anything. There was no rules. She remembers as young as 4, like screaming at the chef, "We'll all get you fired." She talks about like driving those golf courses. Like they would just break them. They would run into the fence. They would mess up the pool. They would mess up the grass. And the next day it would just be magically fixed. And if anybody told her no, she would say, I'm going to tell my dad what you said. And from the time she was young, she knew she had all this power that no adult could tell her no. She was allowed to do whatever she wanted. And her father like loved that. He gave her all the power in the world to act this way. Meanwhile, she didn't love Vernon, Elvis's dad. I couldn't get away with much when Vernon was around. He was more of an authoritative figure to me. I wasn't close to him. I would avoid him at all costs. I wish I had a different relationship with my grandfather. I just kind of hid from him.
And so again, there's this feeling where you're like, well, you did need to go to your mom's house. And at this point, you don't know how bad things were with Priscilla. So it's just like, I don't know, this is like a bad way to raise someone.
She also remembers that anytime she got hurt, her dad would get mad at her. One time she like went over the golf course and ripped up her knee, and he slapped her on the hand as a punishment. And he said, don't get hurt. That upsets me. Or one time she went to the doctor with an earache and was screaming from the pain, and Elvis had to leave the room. And she's like, that's how much he loved me. He couldn't even be there for me when I was in pain. He was really mad when I got in pain because he loved me so much.
It is hard hearing how like idealized and obviously fucked up situation is.
Once the gates got closed, Graceland was like a city of its own jurisdiction. My dad was the chief of police and everybody was ranked. There were a few laws and rules, but mostly not. She goes, I used to run over people's feet with the golf cart and take off. One day I was tearing up the backyard with the cart and someone told me to stop doing it. And I said, I'll tell my father on you when he wakes up. Another time somebody told me that I couldn't do something when I was on the golf cart. And I said, I'll tell my father that your wife. I wish I could remember what it was I said his wife had done. I was wild.
She was kind of a terror. There were people who would wait at the gates trying to get photos of Elvis, and she would say, like, give me your camera and $20 and I'll go inside and take a photo for you. And she would go inside and just like take a picture of a wall and bring back their camera and take $20. Or she would throw their camera into a bush.
Because my dad slept all day, I was on the run. And she talks about how she would just like run amok all day with no supervision. And then every once in a while, an adult would come find her and say, your dad wants to see you. And she would like report to his room, and she loved it. She felt so special to get to go see him. And one time she went up and he had gotten 3 rings, one for her that was diamonds, one that was rubies for her friends, and one that was sapphire for the other friends. And that's just how he was. She was allowed to do whatever she wanted, and then he would give her gifts. 20 minutes before my dad was due to walk on stage in Las Vegas, my mom told him, I'm leaving, and he still had to go out and perform. I was 4 when they split up, but I remained so close with my dad. I knew how much I was adored and how much he loved me. I knew that he knew I hated leaving him. Hated going to my mother's new home in Los Angeles. Loathed it. he got a house there to be closer to me. So this is such an interesting telling of the divorce conversation, because in Priscilla's book, I mean, at this point, he had effectively left her. She was shacked up alone in Graceland with the baby. He was out on tour with his other girlfriend. She was not allowed to visit him because he didn't want to have to send his other girlfriends home. And then when she came to tell him that she was going to leave him, he raped her. And so to look at that scenario and go, my poor father, he still had to go on and perform. Well, when he wasn't performing, he was drugged within an inch of consciousness or screaming or cheating. I don't know when else he could have got to him.
Yeah. It's hard because I get why she wouldn't have read Priscilla's book or why she and her mom wouldn't have talked about this. But it is very interesting that throughout this entire book, despite any other information, I mean, even Riley talks about it at one point, her mom finding out something negative about Elvis and like completely not being able to handle it.
Yeah. Listen, I understand that you would have to read her book to know about specifically the assault part, but I think surely she understands that her dad was cheating constantly. Like, you know what I mean? Like, there's no way she could have heard anything about her childhood and not understood why her mom had to leave that marriage.
Right.
And it's very interesting that she would be like, my poor dad, he was just trying to make a buck for his family, get out on stage. Elvis and his mother Gladys had been so close, but she loved him so much that she drank herself to death worrying about him. She just couldn't bear him being away in the army, and she died because of it. And that left my dad with his demons, self-destructive demons, and he acted out on them. This also is an interesting like narrative that they have in their family, that like she died of alcoholism because she loved her son so much.
Yeah. Overall, I think because of the level of like fame and money that happened here, you can write these stories that don't entirely check out because there is no reason to back them up in anything else. Like later when they're very spiritual and mystical and things like that, some of it is very beautiful and some of it is like, yeah, it's easy to just like go where the wind takes you because of spiritual energy when you can go anywhere for any reason. And then to like write off misfortunes or like disease or devastation as like lessons in spirituality.
She just tells all these crazy stories about what it was to grow up in Graceland. And this, like, I mean, we know from Priscilla's book, a little bit from Linda's book, Graceland was this crazy place because Elvis's dad had been a sharecropper. They had grown up dirt poor. And then suddenly he becomes overnight almost just like a superstar, the likes of which nobody had ever seen before. And he has all this money and the whole family came with. He's got his cousins, his aunts, his grandma. They're all living in the same house. They all have a huge staff. He's got the Memphis Mafia. He's got that guy Joe Esposito and a couple other people who are just there to say yes to whatever Elvis wants. If Elvis wants everybody to ride alligators, they're all riding alligators. If Elvis wants to go to the store, shut it down and buy everybody's wife a mink coat. Like, it's this entire world run by this one drug addict who
and
has
no one
so
can
much
say
money.
No to him.
Not only they can't, but like, why would they want to?
Right.
Their job is partying with the hottest man in the world
and getting a mink coat for their wife.
Making sure he stays happy. How fun. It actually sounds like hell to me.
Yeah.
I get so sleepy. I'm not somebody who can miss 2 nights in the row of sleep.
No, that's so true. Even for a coat.
Like, I would do it for 2 nights for a fur coat, but then like that third night, I'd be like, I just don't have it in me, guys. I have to walk. So she's just talking about all the different people who lived in Graceland, like Aunt Delta, Patsy, all these people who tried to help take care of her. But there were times when I would eat French fries for 3 days straight, or I wouldn't take a bath for 10 days. Eventually, my dad would wake up and I'd get the call that I was to go upstairs because he wanted to see me. I always loved that call. I'd go and hang out with him in his room. He didn't really leave often. Isn't that crazy?
It's crazy that this was the good parent.
And it's so crazy that even looking back in her 50s as a mother, she's like, it just wasn't fair that I'd have to go home to my mom. She would make me go to school. I'm like, you can't possibly think that this was like survivable. And she looks back a lot on like how lucky they were. And even Riley's childhood, they were so dangerous, just like giving everybody golf carts, giving everybody electric scooters and just saying, sled down the hill on your fucking golf cart, see what happens. And a lot of times they would tip over and topple. And she says at one point her brother, she uses the word decapitated his own golf cart, but he came out fine. I'm like, it is by the grace of God that no children died.
That is what is so interesting, is like being older and looking back on this and not being like, wow, it's really shocking that any of this was like okay back then. Different times. But instead, she's like, anyway, now my kids don't have to go to school.
And then here's my last crazy story from this young. Sorry, if you want to hear every crazy story about growing up in Graceland, I guess you could buy the book yourself. This one gets me. He always had my back. I was friends with one of the neighborhood girls and I spent the night at her house. As I was leaving the next morning, her next door neighbor, an older woman who was watering her lawn in her bathrobe, knew who I was and started calling me names and bad-mouthing my dad to me, saying he thinks he's the king of everything. I had never heard someone talk badly about him like that, and it affected me. When I got home, I told my dad what had happened, and he goes, "Where does she live?" I told him, and he said, "Let's go." We drove up to her house, and he got out and walked up to her, fully decked out in one of his outfits. I saw them talk for a few minutes, and by the end, she had asked him to sign a record for her, and they took a smiling picture together. That's the kind of daddy he was. I am like, what, self-serving? What did that do for you? I was like, I don't know. That's such an interesting story to be like, isn't he a great dad? Somebody said something bad about him and he went and he fixed it for himself.
Yeah.
It's interesting that the king of pop, Elvis Presley, one of the most popular men on earth at the time, couldn't handle hearing some little old lady mowing her yard, didn't like him.
I was very disturbed by her retelling of her childhood as idyllic.
And I see it a lot in Riley. Riley's like, we had a perfect childhood. I'm like, your mom has been married to 5 people already. That couldn't have been good.
It could not have been great. And then Riley writes about going to visit Graceland during her life and how they would just hang out upstairs in Elvis's room while tours happened downstairs. And her mom going every year for Elvis's candlelit vigil. And she saw someone dressed as Elvis hugging her mom. The fan was there every year, so I recognized her. But this time, I was really watching their interaction. I became keenly aware of my mom's body language in a different way, I guess because I was older. And the way my mom surrendered in this woman's arms broke my heart. In that moment, I saw so clearly that she was searching for a parent. To over 20 years after his death, be like finding solace in his super fans is like very devastating.
I think it speaks to the fact that there was not one adult in her life.
Yeah.
That she could look to lean on and trust.
Mm-hmm.
And so just to have an older woman give you a hug and you're like, oh, somebody who cares. The other weird backdrop of living at Graceland is the security threats. She's like, every once in a while, there'd be a threat that some superfan had gotten onto the property and was going to kidnap me, and they would have to ring the alarm and I'd have to go into hiding. A security guard would grab me. And this goes on through Riley's childhood even. Lisa, of course, and especially later when she's married to Michael Jackson, they have to walk around with 10 security guards at all times, and that they would get letters. Like, I don't think they realize, and I guess I know they don't realize how fucking crazy it is to grow up as a little kid, knowing that at any given moment, somebody might snatch you and want to kill you. I think all kids grow up a little bit afraid of
stranger danger.
Yeah, I mean, nobody wants to get kidnapped. I think we all know that's bad.
People aren't regularly getting letters and having active threats against their safety.
Graceland just brought mayhem. My dad would get bored riding around the place, so sometimes he would say to me, get in the golf cart with 8, 9, 10 cars behind us, and he would lead the convoy right out the front gate onto Elvis Presley Boulevard and down the street.
Leaving Graceland and flying out of Memphis International Airport back to LA was true emotional trauma for me. As soon as I got out of the car in Memphis, though, I would completely transform. I never wanted to leave. Then she talks about how when she would be at school in LA, sometimes a car would just pull up outside and it would be her dad calling for her, and she would just get in a car, a limousine or something, and they would fly her out to wherever Elvis was.
I waited for that car to show up. It was always black, usually a Mercedes or a limousine. I felt like my life was the best life ever when that car came around. You can see already in her childhood the way that they enforce this idea that real life is what's happening when you're close to fame.
Yeah.
Or like there's this man out there and he's going to call for you and that's when your real life is. It's funny. We just saw The Substance. We were talking about it on the Patreon. We've now talked about it twice because you saw it first and then me. And something you said about The Substance that I think is so true is this idea that like when you get hot or when you glow up, your real life will start then. And until you're your perfected, idealized, beautiful self, like you're just kind of in waiting. But like once you're your goal weight, once you get that facial, like once you figure out your coloring, then your life begins because you'll be beautiful now. And then you can like allow yourself to start it. And I feel like there's a very similar thing happening with Lisa of like LA life, being in school, all of these friends outside, none of them are real. The only real life is when she's with her dad. And it's almost like then when he died, she's always chasing this idea of like, when is life real? When do I start life?
Mm-hmm.
What's the purpose? And she can never find it.
Yeah.
Because she was never taught how to like build it day to day or for herself.
Yeah. Her life was never hers. It was always built around 2 parents that were
like huge narcissists.
Spinning out massively.
Yeah. Interestingly enough, though, she's like, I hated the limelight. I just liked the limelight on him, loved it on him. It was not something that came to me inherently. I absolutely abhorred it. But in other less public ways, I loved basking in the fame with him.
Then she would get called back to LA because she had to go to school and she would like beg her dad to stay. And her dad would say, I'll ask your mom, but you probably have to go back. She wants you to come home. My dad didn't talk about my mom in a bad way at all. He didn't want me to think negatively of her. In retrospect, they did a fantastic job of maintaining a united front and a real friendship bond.
And then she talks about her dad's anger. She says, you could always sense my dad's intensity. If it was good, it was incredible. But if it was bad, watch the fuck out. He died when she was 9. So all of these stories are from when she's truly a little girl. And they were all in some giant suite at a hotel. And they said, duck, hide. And she has to hide behind a chair while he is like on a rampage, throwing all the furniture of this hotel off the balcony, throwing things around the room. I mean, she's a little girl, his daughter, hiding from him because, of course, he's upset he can't get Demerol, she thinks. And she says, he was respectful, though. He wasn't rude to people. He wasn't an angry person. He didn't live there. Some people full on live in destruction. Others buy some real estate and just walk around in anger for a little while. My dad would just visit. I mean, there's a lot of people who never in their life throw all the furniture in a room off a hotel balcony.
Especially with their daughter in the room.
I mean, just this idea that she's like, but he wasn't like, sometimes he got upset.
He wasn't like that.
He was a respectful guy, first and foremost. She really, in her whole life, never had like any kind of tentpole for what normalcy is. And it's so sad. And I don't know. I think that that's what her life is. It's watching somebody who never was given a single role model try to like recreate a life out of nothing.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard.
He hit the roof and called 10 different doctors and nurses until he found someone who would give him a fix.
I remember sitting next to him on a roller coaster that day, the zippin' pippin', keeping one eye ahead on the ride, the other on his gun in his holster, which was on my side. Unless you knew or understood him, that sounds terrible, I know. You might think he was crazy carrying a piece with his daughter sitting next to him, but he was just from the South. It was just really funny. So we rode and rode. That was about a week before he died.
I think that was what was so stressful about this book, is reading this with no processing of, like, I get when you're a kid being like, how funny is it that my dad just has a gun on him while we're on a roller coaster?
I mean, of all the places to have a gun on a roller coaster feels like the worst one because of the jostling.
There's so much jostling.
There's so much specific panic-induced jostling. He seems also like a man who would shoot a roller coaster.
I mean, there's panic-induced jostling and then there's mechanical-induced jostling.
But that's what I mean. Like, the jostling makes you panic, and now you're moving around on drugs, scared.
And this was in like, what, probably the 70s?
Yeah.
Roller coaster technology was not even as smooth as it is now.
I personally would say you shouldn't bring a gun on a roller coaster, but I'm also a libtard who doesn't think you should bring a gun anywhere. So what do I know?
That's so true.
I was always worried about my dad dying. Sometimes I'd see him and he was out of it. Sometimes I would find him passed out.
She and her friends would be hanging out in her room, and then her dad would come to the door and they'd see him about to topple over. She says one time, her and her 9-year-old friends went to go hold up a passed out Elvis Presley. I knew something tragic was coming, which made me feel protective, and I had to watch out for him.
Towards the end, she would watch him just get sick, and she would go down and get everybody and say, like, come help, my dad needs to throw up. And I think she took a lot of pride in being super aware of what's going on. She remembers a time watching everybody like try to walk him around the room to keep him awake.
So she's constantly on the lookout for her dad. She takes a lot of pride in being the person who like has a connection with him, where she can tell when he's in distress and get to him as quickly as possible.
And she just tells story after story. And I only bring it up because later she's like, I wasn't spoiled. But she tells story after story of how spoiled she was at Graceland. And one of the examples is she wanted her friend's Barbie case and the friend wouldn't give it to her. There was a statue in my room and I picked it up over my head and Laura started screaming, no. Then her eyes darted to my right and I looked over to see my dad standing there. I quickly put the statue down and tried to act like we were just playing. What are you doing? He said. Nothing. Just playing. I said. Don't kill your best friend. He said. Words of wisdom. I'm like, I don't know. That sounds kind of spoiled to me. I think if I had threatened to kill my friend over a Barbie case when I also had everything in the world, I would have gotten in trouble.
Looking back, there was really only one thing I was sure of, that I was loved by my dad. Oh my God. Speaking of being spoiled, she went to spend the summer with her mom's parents. And she said that she had to be debraticized because she spent so much time with her dad and it had turned her into a brat. But then she was looking for her perfume and she couldn't find it. And it was in her grandma's purse. And she was like, that bitch robbed me.
I know that I act like a princess sometimes, but it's strange because I am filled with self-doubt. It was all very confusing. She talks about his 2 girlfriends. She said she loved Linda Thompson. And Linda Thompson was like the only person who ever truly cared about her. She goes, but I did not like Ginger Alden. Nobody did. And she really blames Ginger Alden for Elvis's death. And it's really incredible the burden that women are expected to bear around these great men when you're in that dynamic. It's like to be around him is the most incredible gift a woman can ask for. And in exchange, you must put up with his abuses, his cheating, his infidelities, his drug addiction. You must make sure that he like keeps enough drugs that he's happy, but make sure he never overdoses and dies. And also, like, if you take the drugs away and he gets mad and kicks you out, that's your fault. It's a tough line to walk.
It's so interesting because it is like, what type of girlfriend does an abusive drug addict deserve? Like the way that everyone's like, oh, she's just using him for money and attention. It's like, yeah. Like, why would someone who's like kind and lovely deal with what he forces people to put up with?
It's so funny. She goes, she was driving him crazy, Ginger Alden, playing him hard. She would be there for him 1 minute, then gone. I don't know, just that idea that like she was the problem in that relationship. I don't know. I have to say, this book made me think like, damn, if you're a dad and your daughter hates you, you're like a really bad guy. Because women will put up with a lot from their fathers.
I knew it was not good. I got taken out of the room. There were so many times that I found him face down on the floor, unable to control his body. It was the barbiturates. So she's woken up. It's 2:30 in the afternoon, which is very early for him to be awake and for people to be buzzing upstairs. And it's because Elvis has been found face down in his bathroom. Lisa Marie is taken downstairs. Later, he's pulled out in a stretcher and she doesn't know if he's alive or not.
He wasn't pronounced dead yet. They took him out and I started screaming that I wanted him, that I needed him. And I started kicking and punching whoever was holding me back, trying to get away from them, but they wouldn't let me go. The front door shut. To be fair, if I had gotten to him, I would have seen his face, which was distorted, and that would have traumatized me more.
I didn't know what to do. Anger, extreme anger was my first response. The grief came later. I don't really know why. I was angry at the universe that this could happen. My life as I knew it was completely over.
That afternoon, once they took him away, and this is something I've been upset about my whole life.
And this is crazy.
It turned into a free-for-all. Everybody went to town. Everything was wiped clean. Jewelry, artifacts, personal items, before he was even pronounced dead. You can still find things from that day coming up at auction.
And so this level of trauma that she's experienced, like that everyone is just a vulture.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how you overcome it.
And I mean, and it persists. And I think that's the problem with fame and money in this country is that, or I guess everywhere, when you are known for being rich, when you're known for being famous, it's going to attract the kind of people who want to exploit it. You're not wrong in being suspicious, but I think that makes it very hard to go through life. Yeah. Suspicious, like rightfully suspicious of everybody.
I heard my mother was coming for me. That was the worst. It felt like an invasion. Graceland was my place with my dad, and I didn't want her there.
She was going to wreck the whole vibe. Oof, imagine reading that about yourself, that like you have an energy that you could ruin a funeral.
Yikes. So then they open the funeral to the public. So they do open casket visitation of Elvis that anyone can come. And for days, she sat at the top of the stairs and just watched people come and mourn her father.
I was actually so busy looking at everyone else's grief that I couldn't actually have mine yet. I was trying to grieve my dad, but at the same time, I understood that he was Elvis Presley. I understood his persona and that being Elvis is what he loved doing most.
It'll hit me still on and off. There have been nights as an adult where I just get drunk and listen to his music and sit there and cry. The grief still comes. It's still just there.
I felt sick. I was stuck with this woman. It was a 1-2 punch. He's dead and now I'm stuck with her. That's, of course, her mother. She's sent back to LA. They spend the summer traveling through Europe with her mom and her aunt, just trying to like get her distracted.
And then her mom sends her to overnight camp. And then after camp, my mom wanted me to go to a good school, so she put me in a ritzy one in Los Angeles. Everyone had a famous father and mother. I wasn't into that at all. Then my mom got a French boyfriend and became obsessed with being French. So she put me in a French school and made me do fucking French lessons. I wanted my other life back. The problem is her other life wasn't a life at all. It was just like days serving Elvis.
Mm-hmm. She did allow me to go to Memphis every Christmas, Easter, and summertime. I'd stay with Patsy, who was a mother figure to me, and I would hang out with her and her kids. It meant so much to be a part of that family.
Riley recalls listening to Elvis when she was younger and how her mom rarely turned his music on purpose. Whenever I would hear Elvis's voice, I'd feel my mother's anguish, feel the loss of him.
Vernon died in 1979, and then a year later, my grandmother died. I remember a car pulling up to school both times. It became a thing that a car would just randomly show up. I got used to it. I started to think, there's this car. Who is it now? I was becoming numb to everything, just another funeral, another loss. Memphis was becoming a place just to go back to for funerals. Enough trauma had happened that it wasn't even affecting me anymore. Everyone was kind of expecting me to be upset, but nothing was fazing me. There was just so much trauma.
My mother sent me away a lot, but I will say she was really good at birthdays. Then her mom joins the Church of Scientology and Lisa Marie starts going to Scientology.
They said it can make you really powerful. And at that time, she was obsessed with like Bewitched and I Dream of Jeannie. And she's like, cool, I'd love to be powerful like a witch.
And then later she's like, I don't know if my mom was just dropping me off at Scientology all the time just to like have somewhere for me to go, but it was somewhere for me to go. It didn't feel like an organized religion. It felt like cool, artsy, unusual people. It became my tribe.
Can I say, All in all, I think that Scientology was good for her.
I know.
It was just somewhere to go that told her not to do drugs and drink.
Yeah. My mom was very strict. She was never a friend or someone I could talk to. I felt like I was her trophy.
I can see that my mom had been strong in a good way. More than anything, she was worried about me being spoiled. I don't think I was. I think that I could be absent-minded about things, but I don't think I was deliberately spoiled. I know my dad spoiled me, but my mom did the opposite. It was about, for her, how things looked. The way things appeared seemed more important than feelings. My mom would never allow herself to lose control. Everything was all in its place. So she's gone a lot. She's trying to become an actress. She has all these different boyfriends. I guess Lisa's left to herself. And she has a really hard time making friends. And in her mind, Memphis, she has all these friends and cousins and family. And in LA, she doesn't get along with anybody. I was terribly insecure, frightened, scared, you named it. People wouldn't make friends with me, or they'd get competitive, whose parents were richer, who had the bigger house. That still happens, and people think I'm a bitch because unfortunately I have my mom's chili thing. She's also really bad at school. All she does is come home and listen to her music.
And then she's also talking to her dad in her dreams all the time until 1992 when her son is born. Support for Celebrity Memoir Book Club comes from Expedia. Traveling with someone lets you get to know them on a whole new level. Claire, if you were to travel with one of our memoirists, who would you travel with?
You know who I think has a great time?
Who?
Actually, okay, Viola Davis has a story about the time George Clooney let her use his Lake Como house. And it's so funny because in this incredible story, she takes like a few pages to be like, let me tell you about this vacation I went on. If I could have gone on any vacation with any person, it would have been Viola Davis on that vacation. She was like, I've been to a lot of nice places. This was bananas. I would have used Expedia.com to get the flights there.
I think that if I was going on a beach vacation to like relax, I would go with Emrata because I want it to be free. And I think that if I were to like go explore an exciting city, I would go with Gina Davis because I think she would like teach me things.
Can I tell you, you could not pay me to go on a beach vacation with Emrata, but shout out to your confidence. Shout out to your unshakable sense of self.
You know what? Your ideal vacation might not look like the next person's. But with Expedia, Hotels.com, and Vrbo's Unpack 25, you can find your dream vacation for 2025. With one-click trips, you can book your favorite influencer's entire vacation itinerary, or you can use Expedia travel shops to find interesting things all over the world. See all the travel trends and find your somewhere to look forward to at expedia.com/unpack25. When I was 10 years old, my mom sent me to a couple different schools in Los Angeles. I don't know how long she ever went to a single school.
Yeah, they're always switching to different fancy rich kid schools. Sometimes it's like a strict private school. Sometimes it's French. Sometimes it's an Ojai. Sometimes it's a boarding school. But still, over the next few years, I started to develop a really bad attitude and I was getting heavily into drugs.
My mom couldn't control me. There was nothing she could do. I wasn't easy for her. I felt like my mom was actively trying to figure out how to send me away.
I knew by then she'd been thinking of putting me in a boarding school in Switzerland or on a kibbutz in Israel. I found 4 or 5 applications to different places. And she said every time they would apply, she would sabotage it by doing really badly on the tests. And then they sent her to Happy Valley School in Ojai. And at first she's like, this place sucks. I don't want to come. And then she found out everybody there was like down to do drugs too. And she's like, actually, I think I like it in Ojai.
All I wanted to do was drugs, weed and coke mainly. I wasn't addicted to one particular substance. I liked it all.
My main purpose in life was to find a good score. I soon settled into a heavy metal phase, dyeing all my hair black or bleaching it in drugs. They didn't really want to throw her out, but you know.
She did get removed from school. At this point in my life, my mother's role was to be a chronic stop sign.
Can I say something though about this?
Yeah.
I do think that is your parents' role in your life when you are like a preteen teenager.
Yeah.
I do think like so much of being a parent is stopping a child from doing things that'll harm them long term. That wasn't a failure of your mother. That's actually one of the few things she did correct. And we're about to get into like the major failure, I think, of her mother. Her mother failed her miserably. But to be like, ugh, my mom was always telling me, no, you can't do drugs. Like that was actually such a good mother thing. Like that's true.
To say that you need like rules and a schedule in school and no drugs is like correct.
That was like the first thing in your life that was good parenting. But again, she is somebody who's never even been around children being raised right. Like she couldn't guess it if she wanted to.
Yeah. So then her mom starts dating a guy named Michael Edwards. They dated for about 6 years in all. He was often on drugs too. He and my mom would fight constantly and it was physical. I'd hear her screaming. So he starts coming into her room at night
and molesting her when she's around 10 years old. I woke up to find him on his knees next to my bed, running his finger up my legs under the sheets. And if I moved, he stopped. So I moved. I was awake, but I was trying to go to sleep. He said he was trying to teach me what was going to happen to me when I got older. He said that's what they do in Europe. He's just trying to like help her out. She immediately goes to her mom and tells her what had happened. And her mom gets very upset and like makes him apologize and promise not to do it again.
Right, which is not how it works.
And then he ended up like finding all these loopholes in her own mother's rules about not molesting her daughter and would like spank her and then have her like look away and essentially like masturbate in the corner after he had spanked her. And she would go to her mom and she would be covered in bruises and say like, look what he's doing. And her mom would say, well, what did you do to deserve that? Or he would say, she was flirting with me. And sometimes she would make him apologize, but he stayed around for 6 years.
Edwards was there more than my mother. I was more used to having him around than her.
Then when she turned 14, she got her first boyfriend. They were together for about a year and all they ever did was kiss. But then she went to like the Bahamas with her mom on a photo shoot. And there, an extra on the photo shoot was 23 years old and they started dating. She was 14 at this point.
And she loses her virginity to this 23-year-old at age 14. They date for a couple of years. And then when they break up, he sells photos of them together to the tabloids. And the tabloids don't even care that she's at that point 16 and he's, I guess, 25.
They sold the story, got paid for the photos. He didn't care about me. It was just an opportunity to him. Ours was an illegal relationship and selling those photos added him. But the media at that time didn't care that I was underage and just advertised this personal information.
That was my first big love and my first big betrayal.
The first time my mom told me about this betrayal, she said it was her first memory of feeling used. This is Riley talking about Lisa. The first time she realized people had an agenda with her, she talked about it regularly throughout her life. It was a core trauma for her. It was just one of a series of events from her childhood that came together to build a foundation of distrust in people, a distrust that she never really got past.
And how could she? I mean, that is heinous.
So then she's like failing out of school. Her mom makes her live with her again. And then they like don't know what to do. They're at this impasse. They're fighting constantly. I guess the stepdad is kind of getting violent and throwing things at her. I mean, it's just a really chaotic situation at home. So they pack her bags and in the middle of the night, they take her to the Scientology Celebrity Center.
For rehab.
The first morning, I removed the large mirror from the wall, called my coke dealer and invited him and about 6 or 7 other people. We proceeded to have a 4-day bender in the room.
Great.
And then she goes down and is like, I need help. So they move her to a nicer room.
And they have her taking care of someone who's at the Celebrity Center for rehab. I thrived in taking care of her, helping someone else. Now I essentially had my own apartment in the Celebrity Center and I made a lot of friends there. And she was still sometimes hooking up with the guy who had sold photos of her.
She's now 17 years old. And at this age, she meets
Danny Keough. She meets him because he's in a band that runs with the group that she hangs out with. They see each other at parties every now and again.
She's 17. He's 21. She had a crush on him. The whole band had a crush on her.
I was already guarded, but I'd put up an extra layer if I felt like someone was an asshole, especially after what happened with the older boyfriend who sold photos. So she thinks Danny seems like a bit of a womanizer. So initially she's like, you don't seem like the kind of person I could ever date. And that makes him obsessed with her.
They just like end up finally getting along and hanging out and falling in love. And after that, Danny and I solidified into a relationship. I was still being really careful. He left a trail of broken hearts. This is so funny. She's like, he always broke up with the girl. At this point, you're talking about a 21-year-old.
Yeah.
There's nothing in his romantic history that has anything to do with who he is as an adult. Do you know what I mean? Like this idea that's like, he was a heartbreaker. His longest relationship had been 6 weeks. And I'm like, well, yeah, because he's a kid.
He's 21. It shouldn't be that much longer than that. You know, when someone's on Love is Blind or something and they're like,
when will it be my chance? I'm 21 years old and I feel like it'll never be me.
They're like, I actually just got out of a really intense 6-year relationship. And it's like, how old are you? 22? Okay, so that was your high school boyfriend.
Yeah.
I was completely head over heels in love with him, but he had a crush on some Italian girl who didn't speak any English. So they break up after like 6 months.
Yeah, I think 4 months, which had been his longest relationship, but they broke up. And then he breaks up with the Italian girl and they date other people, but she's like obsessed with him. She's always got an eye on him.
She is obsessed with having kids with him. She just feels it in her bones that he is who she wants to have kids with.
She shows up finally and is like, this is really eating me up. So let's just talk about how we actually feel. No more games. We were completely honest with each other. And then a couple of weeks later, we went on a date to the MTV Music Awards.
She remains adamant that he hated that she was famous. He had no interest in fame.
I will say, who is he?
I guess then he doesn't have an interest in fame because he could have really parlayed his Presley association to the big bucks.
Yeah, to this day, I don't know who he is. And also, in this book, they talk about him in the past tense a lot, and I kind of assumed he died.
Me too.
Is he alive?
I think so.
The death doesn't come up, and this is a pretty recent book. But it's crazy because I'm like, I was waiting for him to die because she keeps being like, he was really charming and good looking. And I'm like, so now he's dead or ugly.
Okay, so she's dating Danny. She goes, we didn't think being famous was cool. We didn't really hang out with other celebrities. Anyway, I got myself a job as Jerry Schilling's assistant. Jerry was on the board of Elvis Presley Enterprises. You didn't get yourself a job.
Well, she did in the way that like I would get myself a new sweater.
Yeah.
She like went to her job store and picked one out. I don't know. She did get herself that. Like she was not hired by somebody.
Yeah, she got it for herself.
By like calling up and saying,
I want it.
Give me a job now, please.
My mom was at the helm of Elvis Presley Enterprises and wanted to get me trained for when I took over when I turned 25. It's just so interesting that her mom had a dream for her to like have a job of any kind.
Can I say, is being the board of your inheritance a job? I think her mom just knew that like you have to know how to run your own inheritance or else people will steal it from you.
That's smart.
I would like hardly call that a job.
She got fired after
like literally
6 months.
Imagine being like one day when you're older, you're going to sit on this pile of gold with a shotgun to make sure nobody else takes gold from your pile. Like I wouldn't be like, that's the job. I'd be like, that's a seat.
That's true.
I wish that was my job though.
Sitting on gold.
And shooting people who came near me. I'd say, back off, Jerry Schilling. That's my gold. My dad gave it to me. He worked really hard for it.
He made a lot of women devastated over it. Okay, so this time her and Danny date for about a year and then she gets pregnant. But then they get an abortion because they don't feel ready for a kid and she is not happy with that.
Something crazy is that the first 4 months they dated, she also got pregnant then and then she had a miscarriage or she had an ectopic pregnancy.
Mm-hmm.
And then when they were back together the second time, they got pregnant, she had the abortion and then they broke up pretty quickly after because of it, because it really broke her heart to do it. She really regretted it immediately. And then she did something pretty crazy, which is she got her ass pregnant. She trapped that man. She said, you owe me a baby, actually, and I've come to collect.
She goes, I've changed my mind about the abortion. I'd like to re-get pregnant. And she goes to her aunt's house, tracks her ovulation, and then like flies down to see him on tour to have sex to get pregnant.
Danny knew he had to marry me. I trapped him. I didn't really mean to, but I did. And then Riley comes in and goes, my mom subsequently told me every detail of timing her ovulation for that moment in Aruba. And she absolutely meant to trap my dad.
Okay, so Priscilla was not happy.
To her, Danny was just a really good looking wild musician with no real job and no real prospects.
I mean, what are you?
Who needed anything? I don't know, man. We've got Elvis gold we're sitting on.
Yeah, I guess I feel like, I don't know, why not?
Yeah, Lisa Marie was a 20-year-old Scientologist who can't stop getting pregnant.
Danny was a really good-looking wild musician. Like, that seems like a good thing.
And Priscilla was a formerly hot teenager. So we're all something. You know what I mean? And we can all be reduced real quick.
She told me I needed someone more distinguished, more established. They really made efforts to get Danny out of the picture. Priscilla's boyfriend would take Danny out and like threaten him to leave.
I was petrified at this point. It felt like me and Danny against everybody, but I stayed pregnant and we got married at the Celebrity Center with just my mom and a minister and a few close friends in attendance. And then I did like a big wedding later. I had so many paparazzi following me, so much attention on me being pregnant. I just couldn't bear it. I was being harassed constantly. For the first time, I was getting into car chases, driving crazily to get rid of them just to go to the store. This really echoes Pamela Anderson's story about like the way that the paparazzi hounded her and was horrible to her during her pregnancy right after her miscarriage. And I was just thinking about it in light of how people were mad at Chapel Rowan this weekend for like demanding an apology from the paparazzi. The paparazzi are not your friends. They're not even like good people in society. I mean, this idea that we can't like remind paparazzis to respect boundaries and be polite when they have actually caused deaths. I mean, they caused Princess Diana's death. They like caused
Britney Spears to get
conservatorship. I mean, like these are people who disrespect boundaries for a living. The idea that we're not allowed to put them in their place. Fuck you.
I saw her and I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. And then I saw the amount of people like calling her out on it. And I was like, why? Get a fucking life.
It is so funny to be like, don't say that to that paparazzo. He's just a good man trying to ruin you.
He's just a good man trying to get photos of you looking funny so that he can sell them for extra money.
He's entitled. He's allowed.
You exist in public. Therefore, a man should be able to use you for whatever he wants. So they made all these attempts to get Danny and Lisa Marie apart. They also kept trying to get Lisa Marie to abort Riley, which is a tough thing for Riley to be writing about.
But she's born. She comes out. She's beautiful. And they sold the photos to People magazine because they were told if you just sell the photos, then people will stop hounding you for the photos. They sold them for $300,000. Elvis's first grandchild, here she is. At the time, this was the 80s, so $300K, that's like close to $1 million today. God, nobody even wants my baby photos. Not even my mom.
So true.
People look at them and they go, ah!
My eyes. That baby looks weird.
I hate that baby.
My head was so peanut shaped.
I was really skinny, which is like not what you like in a baby. Nobody ever is like, oh, I love how muscular your baby is. People actually hate that. They're like, why is your baby so jacked? It's too strong.
Support for Celebrity Memoir Book Club comes from Expedia. Not all travel is created equal, and everyone is a different type of traveler, but you can find your ideal trip for 2025 at expedia.com/unpack25, a list from Expedia, Hotels.com, and Vrbo, where they have found the best travel destinations for 2025. Claire, what type of traveler are you?
I'm a JOMO.
Tell me about JOMO.
I'm a joy of missing out. If I'm out of the country, you cannot reach me, okay? I am born identitying myself. I specifically do not like lock my phone onto the new plans so that when I leave my hotel, I cannot get a text. I cannot check my phone. I cannot be on social media. I am in the city 1985 style, okay? There is no way to get to me. I'm doing nothing with my eyes but looking around and doing nothing with my thumbs but giving thumbs up to the passerby saying, I look local, no? I love to go somewhere and have no clue what's happening at home.
Thanks to Expedia, I am also able to experience JOMO, the joy of missing out, the ability to just go to a place and unwind, because I have a fear every time I go somewhere, a FOMO, a fear of missing out, that it'll be my only time going somewhere and I have to see everything there the entire time. But with Expedia's travel plans and their itineraries and their trips that they've set for you, I can say, okay, travel is easy. You can come back here sometime. Just enjoy it. Check out the Unpack 2025 from Expedia, Hotels.com, and Vrbo to find your 2025 travel destination. You can find yours somewhere to look forward to at expedia.com/unpack25. I was married at 20, a mother at 21, similar to my own mother, but when Riley was born, everybody was happy. I fell in love with being a mom and I realized I had been called to care for something else.
So then Danny gets into a new band called 10-Inch Men, and Lisa develops a crush on the singer, like the front man of this band, and she's like, that caused a problem in our relationship.
Why don't you just not look at him?
So then Danny starts doing mushrooms and smoking weed, and it was causing fights between us because she was totally anti-drug at this point because of Scientology. But ultimately, they moved to this house in Mountain Gate above the 405. We were just normal married couple. We were having parties and BBQs with the family.
So they got a ton of threats. Their security was constantly at risk. Because of everyone's fixation on Elvis, this man would write these letters to Lisa Marie where he was convinced that Riley was his daughter. Like, he thought he was married to Lisa Marie and he was going to come
and kill Danny to reclaim her.
Yeah.
She goes, after that, we lived in mostly gated communities. We had to. I mean, I guess it's so crazy because at this point, I was born in 1992, as you guys may know. And I know Elvis is like, obviously Elvis is iconic, but the idea of like writing death notes to his son-in-law is so preposterous that it's hard to imagine that that's what Riley Keough grew up with. It must be so funny to have grown up being more famous as a baby than you are kind of as an adult. No offense.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
I do.
Like, it is so funny that like growing up, they had to move to a gated community because like they had so much paparazzi and threats that they needed security. And now as an adult, she's like becoming an actress and she's probably like calling up Backred being like, do you guys want to see where I'm getting coffee? I'll tell you. Daisy Jones and the Six must be promoted.
I also just think like celebrity is different now.
Well, I think, and this is something that like I've heard the A-list movie stars say, that one of the weird positives of like the Kardashians rising is that there's so many people who court this kind of fame that if it's not what you want, it's easy to like hide.
Yeah. So then she decides she wants to have a boy. Lisa Marie wants to have a second kid who is a son. And she reads up about how to make sure it's a boy and she plans it and she does have a boy. They're living in Florida at this point to be closer to Scientology.
Also, I think just to get away from the pressures of celebrity.
Yeah. But they're spending a lot of time adjacent to Clearwater, Florida.
I'd wanted to sing my whole life, This Is Lisa, but I just hadn't. I took the lessons just to warm up my voice, but one day I told my teacher to turn around and not look at me. I said, just listen. And if I have a shot at this, or if you think there's something in me whatsoever that should pursue this, let me know. If not, then we'll act like this never happened. So she sings an Aretha Franklin song. And she says the teacher is like mind blown and grabs everybody. And they're all like, wow, you're such a good singer. So she decides to cut and produce this song with Danny, Baby I Love You, a cover of this Aretha Franklin song. I'll have to listen and see if that's good. That's kind of a insane person to cover.
Yeah.
As your debut. To be like, little old me, I guess I'm kind of like Aretha Franklin.
Be like, I don't know if I'm a good singer. Let me just try to be Aretha Franklin and see.
Everybody's jaw dropped. They couldn't believe it was my voice. So Dan and I started writing music together and I made a demo tape. And then word got out somehow. And that's when Prince, Michael Jackson, everybody started swarming in. That demo tape changed our lives forever.
So she had met Michael Jackson a few times throughout her life, Lisa Marie, via Elvis and Elvis Association.
And Michael Jackson remembers the first time they met when she was like 5 years old. And he was in the Jackson 5, so he was youngish too.
Yeah. And then when her demo tape is making the rounds, he reaches out to have dinner with her. So they start meeting up and talking about music and getting meals. They just clicked. Phone numbers were exchanged and he'd call me. I was living in Clearwater at the time, working hard on Scientology, and they would just talk for hours and hours and hours. At one point, she goes to stay with him in Vegas, and they're just like staying up all night talking.
I was supposed to go to Vegas for 2 days, but I ended up staying for 8. Nothing happened physically, but the connection was so insanely strong. No one had ever seen that side of him. He wasn't that high-pitched, calculating thing. That was an act. They just start opening up about their lives and their traumas and what it was like to grow up famous. And she says it was like a real ass, like they really were falling for each other and just talking and getting to know each other in a sincere way.
This was also right after he had been first accused, which she says was very hard on him, but it doesn't affect her perception of him.
Yeah, she's like, I was one of the few people who didn't scatter and he relied on me. He would call me every other day. I was like in his corner, which breaks my heart.
Yeah, because no one was ever in her corner when she needed it. Like her mom was in her stepdad's corner when he was molesting. Like the fact that she needed someone to believe her and then she's not believing those kids.
Yeah. The way that the cycles repeat themselves.
Yeah.
To be the enabler of a chronic abuser.
Yeah. So then one day Michael admits that he is completely in love with her and he wants to get married and have children with her.
And so she goes home. She's like, let me think about it. And Danny's like, come get in bed with me. And she's like, I can't. Michael Jackson just said that he wants to marry me and have children. And Danny's like, okay, what'd you say? And she goes, I don't know. I didn't say anything yet. And he's like, okay, well, this is over. So he like immediately packs his bags and leaves.
So then she calls Michael and is like, okay, I guess let's do it.
He tells her that at this point he's still a virgin, that the only person he had really kissed was like Brooke Shields. I was terrified because I didn't want to make the wrong move. When he decided to first kiss me, he just did it. He was instigating everything. The physical stuff started happening, which I was shocked at. I thought that maybe we wouldn't do anything until we got married, but he said, I'm not waiting.
Riley writes about it and how hard it was for her parents to go through this divorce. She didn't understand what it meant. I think Michael got right to my mom's court. She wanted to fix him and she felt that he was misunderstood, a feeling she was very familiar with.
But apparently Danny really stepped up to the plate of being like a great divorced man and filed the papers right away so that she could go marry Michael. They got married 20 days after the divorce was finalized. Danny and her stayed friends till the end.
They lived together almost always. Like he always lived in the guest house or right nearby.
We were best friends. We shared every single family vacation together. Riley and Ben never saw anything bad between us. We made it really great for them. And she was talking about how weird it was to have Michael Jackson as the stepdad. She said, we saw him as normal. We called him Mimi because we couldn't say Michael. But it upped the security. Suddenly they needed to have like 10 security guards all the time.
I mean, the press was obsessed with it. Elvis's daughter and Michael Jackson. And Riley writes about how similar the energy of Michael Jackson was to this energy of Elvis, she thinks. No one ever came close to being her dad apart from Michael. She genuinely tried her whole life to get away from fame, and paradoxically, she fell in love with Michael Jackson. And I think that that speaks to what you were saying earlier, that the way that her life doesn't start unless she's in the room with Elvis. I think that the fact that Michael Jackson existed in a very similar stratosphere
She's always
of
trying
fame.
to find a man to recreate that sense of like, everything's possible. But I think like even from a chemical level, I don't know. that you can ever recreate the joy that an 8-year-old child feels when they're told you have the keys to the palace, you can have cookies for dinner, and you can like ride your fastest ride and steal all your friends' toys. Like, I just don't think that you can feel that kind of joy again.
Right. But she was completely unaware of what like regular levels of human joy felt like. And I think that's what she felt she had to chase. And so she ends up marrying Michael Jackson. I was so happy. I've never been that happy again. We got married in the Dominican Republic. There were 2 witnesses.
Riley also says, my mom was really affected by what people wrote about her. She had no siblings to share the burden, nobody who understood what it truly felt like. In a way, she was the Princess of America and didn't want to be. And this like reminds me of the story of Elvis going over and telling that neighbor she's wrong. I think it would have been much better for her to be shown like, oh, if people say bad things about you, that's fine. You just push forward. Like their opinion doesn't matter. But instead, here's this role model going, if somebody doesn't like you, it's your job to go show them that they're wrong about you and like see if you can switch them.
Yeah.
I mean, as somebody who has experienced online hate, you cannot go through life. And not even online. I mean, I have friends that I watch at work try to do this. People pleaser. Like this idea that somehow if you work hard enough, you can get everybody to like you is actually so damaging. You just have to learn to put up with it. Not everybody's going to like you. Does their opinion even matter?
I'm so interested in maybe a proper Riley memoir at some point because her life is fucking crazy. I don't even think I've ever thought of her as someone who was previously Michael Jackson's stepdaughter.
I don't think of her ever. And that's the crazy thing is there's like so much fame around her. She is who Dakota Johnson, I feel, has been sold to me as.
Yeah, that's so true. At home, they were a regular married couple. So this is Riley talking about Michael Jackson and Lisa Marie. They would drive us to school together in the morning, just like a normal family, though sometimes Michael would bring along a chimpanzee.
Meanwhile, Lisa says about him, he was super interested in people. He could really lift them up. He would do anything he could to turn a conversation back to you and what you were doing. He was deeply fascinated by everything you had to say about what you did, and he didn't like to talk about himself. But then, on the other side, no one had ever seen him with his guard down. I knew that it was rare. With everyone else, he would snap his fingers if somebody brought up anything he didn't like. Snap and you're out. Because he could create his own world, and in that world, everyone had to agree with what he said. She goes, but in our world, I would say what I felt, and he loved that about me because it wasn't aimed at him. Well, he loved that part of me until we started fighting, and I aimed my honesty at him, which was at the end. So apparently, according to Riley, whether or not to have a children was a fundamental conflict in their relationship.
Lisa Marie just did not want to have children.
She said she could tell that he would never co-parent, that everything in his world had to be under his control. And there was just something in her that said, do not let this man control your children's lives.
Yeah, because she had a fear that he would just have her have his kids and then
like take
the kids and leave.
Which is so funny because she is also very controlling over her children.
Yeah. And this part breaks my heart. She fiercely denies that he molested children.
As for the child molestation, I never saw a goddamn thing like that. I personally would have killed him if I had. I wonder if his sudden need to like have sex with an adult woman was in response to the accusations.
Yeah, maybe.
I wonder if that timing was like, you think I like little boys? Well, then explain my wife.
Yeah. So then she starts noticing that his drug use is more than she initially thought.
He starts getting really like cagey around her and kind of lying. And people are telling her things like, oh, he's faking these injuries to keep getting meds and to get out of business deals.
Michael was being really awful. He got mad at me for asking questions. What really happened here? If you have a problem, I'll go with you to rehab.
I flew to New York where he was in the hospital and was with him every day. His mom was there too, along with his team, including his own anesthesiologist. Nobody has their own anesthesiologist. Every hospital has their own. It was a big red flag. At first, I couldn't get a read on what the fuck was going on, but I started to cotton to it. He needed somebody around who could legally administer drugs.
In the room, Michael said, "You're causing too many problems here. They're going to take you to the airport. You need to go home until I'm done. I'll see you when I get back." So I left. I wanted him to come too, but he didn't. I filed for divorce shortly thereafter.
So then Riley says there was actually kind of like a back and forth there that she had been told he was going to divorce her for asking questions. So then she wanted to beat him to it. And then when he found out she had filed for divorce, he got so hurt, he stopped talking to her. But the way that Riley acts like this whole divorce was just a big miscommunication. I'm like, no, it wasn't. He's a serious addict who did not want to hear somebody say, no, you can't do that.
And then he eventually died from it.
It's so funny to watch her, just like her mother, be like, so what happened here was just a bad game of telephone between my stepdad's anesthesiologist that he had on payroll to drug him up as much as he wanted, and my mom, who simply was asking questions. I'm like, no, this wasn't a miscommunication. This was an inevitability. You cannot be in a marriage where one person's not allowed to say no to the other person ever.
Yeah, and I think that the miscommunication was how harsh it was. But this would have happened anyway. Michael Jackson does seem like the kind of person where you're in the circle or you're out of the circle.
Yeah.
He does not have casual acquaintances. My mom always said that how she learned how to ice people was from Michael.
He told her he was going to marry Debbie, this woman who I guess he met through, like, was Riley's ear, nose, and throat nurse, I think, because he wanted kids. Their divorce was finalized in August 1996, and Michael married Debbie 3 months later. She says later, when Michael died, her mom was heartbroken and in London. My mom later told Oprah that Michael often said he was afraid of ending up like her father. He was forever asking my mom about when Elvis died, how it happened, where, why. Michael said, I feel like I'm going to end up the same way.
So then there's this very interesting chunk of the book that seems largely left out of Lisa Marie's tapes, where Riley is like, this is a chunk of her life that she doesn't seem to reminisce on very much because it is between husbands. But it was actually a very beautiful time in our lives.
When my mother sat for interviews that formed the basis of this book, she wasn't in a place where she could recount all the great fun times in her life. She focused mostly on the trauma. Accordingly, there is much less material on the tapes about the years between her divorce from Michael Jackson and her marriage to Michael Lockwood, a gap of about 10 years in which she created a magical life for me and my brothers and was surrounded by a large group of devoted friends. These years constitute some of the happiest times of her life. But there were also years in which the scale of her life ballooned to an almost breaking point. I think that this is such an interesting comment on all memoirs, and like the problem with all memoirs, I don't know, just the question of who gets to determine what your life was.
Yeah.
Is it true that she was at a bad point in her life and that's why she could only focus on the traumas? Or is that what she looks back at her life and sees
as like the tent poles?
Yeah, is what her life was made up of. I don't know that I understand that when she sat down for these interviews, she was in a really bad place. But I also do think she was trained from childhood to see her life as we've said, like only existing while partnered with men or like while in the audience of a man. And so I wonder if these dead years don't even, like she wouldn't even think to talk about them.
I think it's like in the service of someone more powerful that you like view as powerful, which to her is a man, and not in the service of like her children, which is what these years were.
Yeah.
Or in the service of yourself, which is what no years were.
Riley really takes this time to talk about what a great mother she was. I realize now that this was my first understanding of the depth of her maternal instincts. My mom had the strongest such instincts of anyone I've ever met. Eventually it would be clear to me that should anyone hurt Ben or me, she'd probably track them down for as long as it would take, like in a Western. This was the presence you could feel in her, and it wasn't small, it was terrifying.
So their family is very close. Her and her brother are really close. And then her brother and her mom have this just like magnetic connection.
And she says it's like following in the Gladys Elvis tradition of like mothers who just love their boys more than anything.
My mother desperately wanted to get back together with my dad. She believed she'd broken up her family and felt immense guilt. But my dad couldn't risk being that vulnerable again. Yeah, I get that. For her to just like in the dead of night leave you for Michael Jackson, I understand why you can't just go back together. But they were still like together all the time. They were working on music. They were hanging out. Riley tells all these stories about how her mom would just like take her out of school whenever she felt like it. Because obviously Lisa Marie did not get a lot of value from school. So whenever Riley was like, I don't know, what if we just hung out today? Lisa Marie was like, good idea.
After the divorce from Michael, my mom started having panic attacks. This is why she took us out of LA and went to Florida to begin with. They were so severe that she was in and out of the hospital. And she says like at the same time, her dad was so hurt about like the fact that Michael Jackson was right now publicly being accused of being a child molester, and this is the man you're bringing into your family's home.
Yeah.
But the dad moves to Florida to help her out while she's struggling physically with the fallout of the Michael Jackson divorce.
The decade after Michael Jackson was her best time outside the Tarzana days with my dad. Things were simple. She had so many friends who really loved her. We would joyously travel the world together as a pack of 25 people, fun every day, all day. I'd wake up to find a whole bunch of people on the deck drinking coffee. It was a dreamlike communal life. We were never alone. She was never alone. But a lot of these people were also
her employees,
staff.
And that's the danger of rich people.
Yeah.
Is that you like somebody, so you employ them, and then you keep them employed because you like them. But you can't believe it's an unequal relationship.
Yeah.
Because you're not seeing what's being held back because you hold all the cards. Lisa says, I really had no prototype to follow growing up. I had no family life, no home life to be an example ever, no stability. I didn't feel any emotional attachment to my grandparents, who seemed to be perfect, who did all the right things, made all the right moves, who got married and had kids and stayed married until the day they died. I guess I didn't really have a shot in hell. Then Riley takes over and tells all these stories about how she created basically their own little Graceland down in the Hidden Hills. And it's funny because she keeps saying we moved there because there was no celebrities there back then. And like everybody there was just like horse people, horse weirdos. And they would just like live on this giant compound where everybody lived, and everybody who was staffed under her mom had kids, and all the kids just ran around in the fairy woods and collected tadpoles and frogs. They were back between Hidden Hills and Florida all the time.
Her dad was the one who made sure they got an education. My mom ruled the roost, but if she wanted something, that's the way it was. A couple of years before I was born, this is Riley, Priscilla had a second child named Navarone. So I looked it up. He was born in 1987 and her book came out in 1985. So he is not mentioned in any of the Priscilla lore.
Oh, that makes sense. Okay.
So Priscilla has a son 2 or 3 years older than Riley. Priscilla was a new mom again, and my mom was a new mom. So this is kind of what brings them back together. They both had babies. It became a point of understanding between them, a new start, a bearing of the hatchet. Though I know my mom was a bit jealous of Navarone too, because he was the little boy that Priscilla just adored. So for Priscilla to be actually mothering someone was pretty hard on Lisa Marie.
But it was a dreamlike communal life. We were never alone. She was never alone. Because my mother had been witness to Michael's life, we now had a private chef, 3 assistants, 10 security guards, agents, business managers, friends, so many people coming and going. At all times, all of the houses on the property were full. 3 of my friends moved in with me in the main house, and we even had my mom's holistic doctor living upstairs. That's always a bad sign. You should never really have a medical professional like come live with you.
Yeah.
Plus, we had 2 nannies, so about 17 people could be living there, and there were the people who would come by every day.
There were 2 solid decades where our family felt very normal to me. That's crazy that this was the normal era.
My mother had a Gaia-like quality, a mystical intuition. Sometimes it felt like Mother Nature lived through her. I feel like what's missing here is this understanding that if she felt like she was controlling the world, that's because it was, again, her world.
Yeah.
They don't know how to live around people as equals. Everybody has to be on the payroll. And what they don't realize is the minute you start paying somebody, you lose them as a friend. Because now their livelihood and their housing relies on
their relation to you.
One morning, my mom and dad were sitting in the kitchen drinking coffee when 2 of her friends, Mike and Caroline, who she had set up and who are now married and lived with us in the upper house, walked in. "You're pregnant," my mother said to Caroline. Mike and Caroline went white. Caroline was indeed pregnant, but only a few weeks. They hadn't told anyone. Okay, how culty does that sound?
Really culty.
It's the same thing at boarding school. When you go to boarding school, they make all the teachers marry themselves, each other. When you walk into somebody's home, live there, meet your partner there, and then raise your children there, like...
That's a cult.
Yeah, your mother wasn't just this amazing presence. She was
dictating a presence.
She was the bearer of payroll.
Yeah.
She was the boss of a company. They don't know anybody normal. They weren't raised near anybody normal. And the only normal people around them are their employees. So they're never getting any honest feedback.
No.
And then I guess the schools they all go to are also filled with other kids in very similar positions.
Yeah.
Be grateful you're normal, because honestly, this was not a good life. I know Riley keeps being like, we were so happy. We had the best childhood in the world. But you're going to get to the end of the book and go, well, did you guys? Because half of you didn't make it out alive. So
I was dimly aware that my mom and her mom had real issues when my mother was younger. But if you look at family photo albums or home videos, you'd see a very close family. Lisa Marie would wake Riley up in the middle of the night to be like, I'm at a party and someone you think is cool is here. Don't you want to meet this celebrity? And just like, I don't know. It's very sweet, but it's also, you're the parent.
She remembers one time in the middle of the night at 2 a.m. being woken up, being driven for an hour to a party in the Hollywood Hills to meet Marilyn Manson. At the time, I was a big Manson fan, so even though it was a school night and an hour's drive from Hidden Hills to the Hollywood Hills, security took me to the party at Jackie Getty's house. I met Marilyn Manson, and then we went upstairs where there were other kids. We tried on wigs all night until the adults were done.
Most nights, I would fall asleep to the sound of a party downstairs and the piano being played and people singing. Ben and I would sometimes sleep together in the same bed. It was very comforting to us. My mother had other boyfriends, and my dad lived in the guest house. So they are always having these big holidays. And then her mom starts testing out a music career. So this is post-Michael, but it's very hard for her to perform and to tour because she is in the shadow of Elvis.
And people want her to be doing like Elvis
covers
and stuff, and she won't do it. And then she says something that was really upsetting to her is when she would tour, people would show up to her concerts in like an Elvis costume or be an Elvis impersonator. How weird to have someone wearing a costume of your dead father watch you sing. She really wanted to be taken seriously, but it was kind of never going to happen. It reminds me of, I just saw an interview Maya Rudolph did where people are constantly asking her about her mother, Minnie Riperton, who died when she was young. Mm-hmm. And she's like, the way that people are constantly just like expecting me to say something cute and adorable about like my largest trauma, losing my mother as a child. It is like weird the way we forget celebrities are a people. Imagine going up to anybody in your life and being like, Oh my God. So your mom died. Did that suck?
So another thing that's very interesting. So Riley's talking about how difficult it was for her mom to have people dressed up as Elvis at Lisa Marie's concerts. But Lisa Marie, in her writing about performing, says, I enjoyed interacting with both my fans and my dad's fans. I would try to do it to the best of my ability, almost to a fault. I'd do whatever I could, talk to them, take pictures, whatever they wanted. I'd spend a lot of time doing that when I was on the road. I always thought it was important to be gracious and grateful. So it's so interesting that Lisa Marie is saying I was trying my hardest to appease the Elvis fans and my fans and anyone who came to see me live. Whereas Riley's interpretation is like going on the road was destroying her.
I've had so many people come backstage and tell me that even if what I do is dark, it has literally stopped them from killing themselves. Oh my God, somebody else feels this way. I love it when they tell me that. It makes me want to keep doing it. Something they do not get into at all is what happened with her music career.
I wonder if she just wasn't particularly driven at it.
I'd be interested to hear what people's critical reception of her, like, was it good? Was it bad?
Yeah, I'm very curious.
In October 2000, my mother met Nicolas Cage at a birthday party for Johnny Ramone. And on August 10th, 2002, they got married in Hawaii. I was 13. When she met Nick, she had been in a serious relationship for 2 years with a musician named John Osasha. I don't know who that is. They were in love, but he was younger and didn't like that Lisa was so involved with her ex-husband. So she just ended up marrying Nick Cage. And it seems like it was a really tumultuous, crazy, incredible display of wealth. Fights were had. Rings were thrown off yachts.
Yeah. And as we know, Nick Cage spent money like it was nobody's business until he had no more.
After 108 days, her hurricane of a marriage to Nick Cage was over. In that interview with Diane Sawyer, my mom said of the relationship, we were so dramatic, the two of us, that we just couldn't stay contained.
It's just so interesting because I don't know, like they're sitting here being like, everything was like pretty idyllic and normal. Anyway, my mom married Nick Cage for 108 days and threw a $65,000 ring off of a yacht. What is what does the word normal mean?
It's also so funny that she's like those 10 years between husbands. She did have a couple other husbands, but nothing serious.
Not like big husbands, not notable husbands.
Can you imagine being married to Nick Cage and being like, that wasn't really a notable one?
I mean, it was 108 days.
Yeah, but he's a pretty famous, like, I'm sorry, if my mom was married to Nick Cage for a period of time, I would be like, that was like a crazy time in our life. And to her, she was like, this was the calmest time in our life.
I feel like marrying Nick Cage is not that crazy when it's the marriage after Michael Jackson.
No, that's exactly what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I'm highlighting the preposterity.
It's the preposterity.
My family is so far removed from being in a situation where my mom marrying Nick Cage is like
not
barely mentionable. Where my mom would go back to write a memoir and like not even mention Nick Cage herself. I would have to come in and be like, and then there was that marriage to Nick Cage.
That's so funny that he's only mentioned in the Riley part of the book.
So then she just like is talking about all these amazing experiences that they had, like the 16th birthday they threw for her in Hawaii. It is so weird. They live like a Jane Austen novel. There's just so much money and so little ambition or drive.
It's so interesting that Riley like properly became an actor.
There's never a question of money. There's always millions of dollars to be spent. There's always a birthday party here, a birthday party there. Go to school if you want. Don't go to school if you don't want. Who cares? We're all just hanging out. Your dad's here. My ex is here. Our cook is here. The holistic doctor is here.
And her dad is like the even normal one. And at this party in Hawaii, her dad just like emerges from a lava mountain.
Volcano, some people would call that.
Whatever. Shirtless with a dot of blood on his nose. No one had any idea how he managed to make it through the lava or what he had been doing out there. It was not uncommon of Danny. He would just show up with a cheeky smile on his face as though nothing happened. As I was headed off to bed, I could never last as long as my parents. I noticed that my dad had taken off the rest of his clothes and was now sitting naked in a lawn chair, calmly drinking champagne with my mom's security guards. I mean, that's just the even-keeled one.
These are the happy, calm, stable moments of their lives.
So then her mom meets a guy named Michael Lockwood, and it felt like her last shot at a stable family. She wanted to marry him and have kids and move to the countryside of England.
And guess what? They did. She also says Priscilla and Lisa at this time kind of made amends, even more than just for their family, but for each other, and they became close. They end up going to Japan and having this gorgeous wedding. This is now what her fifth. So she's got Danny.
It was Danny,
Michael,
Nick, and now Michael Lockwood.
Okay. That's not so many.
No, 4 is reasonable. 1 for the money, 2 for the show.
3 to get ready and 4 to go. And oh, she went.
she marries Michael Lockwood in Japan. They have a beautiful wedding. She did a few rounds of IVF and got pregnant with twin daughters.
Born via C-section, they were named Finley Aaron Love Lockwood and Harper Vivian Ann Lockwood.
So Riley at this point is 19 and really helped to take care of the babies. She was still living with her mom and she would take care of them at night. She was like the night nurse.
For years, my mom had wanted another chance to be a mother. With me and Ben, she had been a young mom. This time she wanted to do it over and be more thoughtful about it and spend more times with her kids. She didn't want tons of staff and nannies raising them, but she wanted to do it all herself, hands-on. Ben's and my childhoods were perfect, amazing, and yet my mom still wanted to do a better job the second time around, to be even more present and do everything herself. And this is when she was like, we'll move to the countryside in England where nobody will know my name and we'll have a humble abode. And she's like, and they did. We only had a chef, one security guard, and 2 nannies, and a couple assistants. But she's like, but that was it. And that's honestly like not even that many.
Also, we hadn't mentioned that Riley and her brother growing up each had their own nanny who lived with them.
Part of what made her want to move is that she started looking into her numbers. She had never been taught anything about money, even though she had that one job that one time for a month or so. She got fired from that assistant job after 6 months, which is crazy to be fired from like your own estate. She began to look into it and found that some staff members were overcharging her cards in ways she didn't feel good about. Too many flights purchased, too many new phones, too many pizzas. Most of these staff members were also her best friends. They weren't thieves. Maybe they just got a little lazy.
No, they were thieves.
No, they just weren't her best friends. They were her employees.
That's true. Okay. I've done that. Charge an extra sweet green salad to the company.
My company?
No.
We're not best friends. We're each other's boss, and it makes for a quite contentious relationship.
It released a dormant feeling that everyone around her had an agenda. Even deeper than that, she thought she was unlovable. You can't have people you're paying be the people that love you.
At the end of that idyllic 10 years, virtually overnight, my mother had let everybody go at Hidden Hills. Friends, security, assistants, people she had known and loved for years. Her religion, she just suddenly wanted everything gone. I wonder, is that Scientology? Something they do not get into at all is what got her away from Scientology.
Yeah.
Because normally they have you by the hooks. Normally it's not so easy to just walk up and move to England. They have Scientology in England.
For the first time in her life, she wanted to be alone.
I can get really mean and really angry and I freak people out when I get like that. It comes from trying to protect myself. I just push people the fuck away. It's the fear of being hurt. I know people can hurt me, so I'll just shut them out. I learned from the best, Michael Jackson. He did it really well.
I woke up about a lot of stuff that had been going on around me for years. A lot of people were invested in having me quiet and manageable.
By then, unbeknownst to all of us, my mother was regularly taking the opioids prescribed to her after the C-section she'd had for my sister's birth.
You have to have something bigger than being high, bigger than that happiness, bigger than that emptiness. If you don't, you're in trouble. So after she gave birth to her twins, she is regularly taking opiates.
She gets really addicted. I was off the rails. When I had my twins and I was in the hospital and they gave me narco, that's when I felt the first oh my God high from a painkiller. I was 40. She was so sad. I don't really know what I was doing, to be honest. I was getting isolated, slowly starting to get rid of everyone and everything in my life, all the pillars I had set up, all the people and the friends and the relationships I was starting to, one by one, dislodge and dismantle each and every one of those things.
Ben and I felt abandoned because of her move to England, and it meant for the first time we didn't all live together in the same house. She got us a house in Calabasas, but then we pretty much stayed in England with her most of the time. It seemed to me that this was her last shot at stability.
They bought some 15th century property in Rotherfield, about 30 minutes northeast of Brighton and the South Coast.
She would hang out with Sarah Ferguson and Jeff Beck. Seemingly, she had done what she set out to do. She'd created a very sweet little life in the countryside. For the first couple of years, they were truly magical. We had no idea that her pill use was very slowly increasing.
And then she says she started to notice weird behaviors in her mother. Like, they'd always been so close and they would bicker here and there. But she said her mother was very reasonable and empathetic and would take accountability. So like if they got into a little squabble, things got patched up quickly. But for the first time, she was noting her mother was becoming kind of vicious and like relentless and not letting go of things and prolonging fights. And she couldn't tell what was going on.
Her brother Ben also partied really hard. So she didn't really know who to lean on for these things. Because when they would go to a party, Ben and Lisa Marie would just get really fucked up.
So things start getting weird. And then finally, they're on vacation and their mom is like, look, I'm addicted to opioids. I need help. I'm going to go to rehab in Mexico. They all go, which is, again, I'm like, is that how rehab works? Does your whole family just do a vacation to Mexico where like you just spend your days in meetings, but you're all still like hanging out? And in the middle, she says, we have to go back to London. I can't finish this program. The kids have to start school again. And they're like, surely you knew
when school started.
And she's like, yeah, but I've changed my mind. And back in England, there was a tacit awareness between me, my brother, and Michael that maybe my mother didn't want to get sober. She was always extremely honest, but I think she felt that being honest was the virtue rather than the changing of her behavior. Since she had admitted it to us, the honesty seemed to give her the license to continue her addiction.
So then she decides to move. Her community was gone. She was in the English countryside with 2 babies and no friends. She decided isolation was the problem. She hated LA and wanted to be closer to Graceland, so she decided she was going to move to Nashville to be more social and make a new record. I felt better. It felt like she had a plan.
So her mother is still partying and drinking a lot, and her brother is too. And Riley is kind of like, okay, I think he might drink a lot, but is he drinking more than anybody else? She's trying to compare it to the other people she knows and being like, does he have a problem? Should I be worried? And she's like, I don't think so, because yeah, he binges, but then he like does long periods of sobering up, and then he binges. So it seems like he's okay.
There's also a lot of partying and drug use behind Riley's back. They would do things behind my back because I was the narc. My mom said I was too harsh on Ben or too harsh on her. I think it was just that I was the only one who wasn't an addict, so I was the downer.
And she says the mom's addiction was really wearing on him a lot in a way that like she also was upset about it, but she could see it taking Ben down.
Then Lisa Marie talks about trying to join AA and just not enjoying it, but she's also left Scientology at this point, which she doesn't talk about leaving Scientology or how involved she was in Scientology.
After I left Scientology, I started upping the pills. I thought, oh my God, I've lost my religion and it's been only pavement to walk on, my replacement family. Everything was gone, all my friends, everything. I knew it was over. And I was so devastated. I used the drugs as a coping mechanism.
So now she's doing cocaine to try to get off opioids and then doing opioids after she does cocaine.
Her addiction would continue through all the stints in rehab on the basis that she was always in severe and life-threatening withdrawals that no doctor could understand. She felt all of the doctors were too harsh. They wouldn't give her enough of what she needed. She was always doing it herself.
So now she's in this horrible cycle that Elvis and Michael Jackson died from, where she is not trusting medical professionals. And she's like using her celebrity to just get more drugs always.
It escalated to 80 pills a day. I just wanted to check out. It was too painful to be sober. My whole life had blown up. It felt like one thing after the other, and I could not take any more beatings. So I feel like what's so interesting here is it seems like what began this addiction was pain pills for her C-section. But then when she talks about it herself, like that's Riley's understanding. But then when Lisa talks about it herself, she's like, I just like couldn't take it. It seems like she had hit this emotional wall where she like had just toughened up and numbed herself as much as possible, and the pain just became overwhelming. I wish there was more from her about like what she feels pushed her over the edge. If it was like the pain was already there and then the pills came at the wrong time, or if she was kind of already searching for an emotional way out, like a way to numb it beyond what she had been able to do on her own.
Yeah. When she lived in Nashville in the depths of her addiction, my mom would often drive 200 miles southwest to Graceland to sleep in her dad's bed. It seemed like the only place she found any comfort.
Riley also says she feels like what happened was like the one thing she ever felt she was good at that couldn't be taken from her was being a mother. And then she was so ashamed of her addiction when the girls were born, the young twins. When she started to feel like she wasn't even that, she couldn't handle it, so she doubled down.
They had a few really terrifying moments where they would be trying to get a hold of her. If they weren't physically in the same location, they'd be calling her and checking on her, and she wouldn't answer. She would always be having stomach problems, and they'd be terrified for her.
She gives like an excerpt of text between her mom and Ben and her. Lisa saying, please come get me out of here ASAP. We can find a trailer or something. We can get to California. I'm not kidding. I need you both. I don't have the strength to leave. I'm not well in any way. My legs and body are swollen. I spit up blood. My ankles are twisted. My lips are bleeding. I throw up everything but yogurt. My feet are so swollen. I'm scared. But they can't get her to go to a doctor. She refuses to go to a doctor, and they're calling her and she won't answer.
She won't go to a doctor in Nashville. She only wants to go to a doctor in LA, but she won't get on a plane. So Ben rents a tour bus in Nashville to drive her out to LA.
She says, we drove because I wanted to do cocaine the whole time and couldn't if I was on an airplane.
So she gets to the hospital in LA and she's in full-on heart failure. She also tells Michael Lockwood she's breaking up with him. And then she goes to rehab finally.
Riley remembers being taken off the guest list in the hospital. In the midst of her addiction, I was a narc to her. When she's in rehab, she decides she's going to get gastric bypass because she feels that she's always been bullied for her weight and that the press had always been so hard on her about her body. And she's like, I'm going to do gastric bypass. And Riley's like, are you sure now's a good time when you're trying to get sober? And so her mother stops speaking to her.
Well, also she's like, are you just trying to get pain medication?
She says, in the throes of her addiction, if you wanted to stop her, you were out. To me, she would say, you don't understand. You're not an addict. Soon she was out of rehab and incredibly depressed.
So Riley is taking care of the little sisters. And so for the mom to see the sisters, she has to live with Riley.
Like legally, she's lost custody of them and she can only see them with a monitor.
Who is Riley?
Yeah. I cannot believe what's been put on that Riley's shoulders.
Me either.
And she's just out there acting her little heart out.
And she just doesn't even have an education.
She doesn't really have anything, but she's still Daisy Jones in the Six. I don't know which one she is in that show.
I think she's Daisy Jones.
Then who's Daisy Edgar?
That's Daisy Edgar Jones, who's a person.
And she's not in that show?
Can I just look it up?
I guess I just assumed Daisy Edgar Jones was in that show, and that's why she got to wear so much Chloe. I didn't know they gave Chloe to Twisters.
Okay, Riley Keough plays Daisy Jones. Suki Waterhouse plays Karen Circo. Yeah, there's no Daisy Edgar Jones here.
Okay, but I am saying you can hear why I'd be mistaken, right?
No, it's very confusing.
And it also seems like the kind of thing that girl would be in, just like a Hulu project.
Daisy Edgar Jones.
Just a sexy little Hulu project.
That's Daisy Edgar. She is from Normal People.
Okay, and what is that if not just some little Hulu project based on a book?
I feel like it's a Hulu project based on a book that's like the Twitter sad girl archetype, whereas Daisy Jones in the Six is like the Tumblr vibey girl archetype.
I'm not going to let you sit here and act like those aren't similar.
No,
I'm not going to let you sit here and be like, this is
explaining why you're confused.
I know why I'm confused, because it's confusing.
Girl's so confusing.
I do think right now for us to have a hot actress named Daisy Edgar Jones who was not in Daisy Jones.
It's tough stuff. Anyway, so they're all living together again. And Ben is also floundering at this point. He can't do anything because he's good at everything. And he just can't decide what he wants in life.
He says that nothing's interesting to him because he's so smart. Which is definitely a smart person problem and not a rich person problem.
No, exactly.
You know who's never too smart?
To have a job?
People who need money.
Right. But he doesn't need money, so why should he have a job? He gets into jewelry making and he makes Riley's engagement ring. She's dating someone who's also named Ben. Back in LA, they're looking after the mother after her surgery and rehab. And Ben is starting to use drugs and alcohol a lot more, but they're not even really that focused on it because they're so focused on Lisa Marie's recovery.
They don't even really notice how bad his depression is getting. My mom was such a powerful person that whatever she was doing really affected all of us. Our lives were dictated by the tone she was setting, and that tone became very heavy and hopeless.
I mean, that's the Gaia thing. It's when you create a world where the world is you, now everyone's world is you, and they don't know any other normal.
Enough pain can hobble anyone. She'd been addicted to drugs for the better part of a decade, and the drugs created a sense of hopelessness that permeated everything. She stopped wanting to do anything. She felt like her life was over. She'd say, I have nothing. I have no husband. I have no friends. I have no life. She was bottoming out.
The following year, my mom was able to move into her own house in Calabasas, and my brother and sisters moved in with her. I swear that house was haunted. It felt cursed.
Can I say, they keep comparing Ben and Lisa's relationship to Elvis and Gladys. They're like, well, what happened is Gladys was so worried about Elvis, she killed herself via alcohol. And then Elvis was so sad his mom died that he killed himself with drugs. And then we were just like them. It feels like a really tough narrative to put on your children.
Yeah. So then Lisa Marie has a horrible seizure. My brother and her assistant were home at the time, and Ben stayed by her sides until the paramedics arrived. So Riley swoops in to take care of the twins because their mom has just had a seizure, and she really puts a lot of pressure on herself for the fact that she didn't take care of Ben at the time, who was like 25.
Ben is really traumatized by the seizure. It really sticks with him for months. He's like very overwhelmed by what he saw, but the seizure does seem to wake Lisa up and startle her into getting sober.
But Ben is like really kind of shoved down a spiral because of it. So then one day they had to move out of this Calabasas house for a little bit because there's mold there. So they're staying in a rental, but he throws a party there for his girlfriend's birthday. And he goes upstairs while this party is going on.
No one in the house heard the gunshot. It took almost an hour for people to realize Ben hadn't returned. Upstairs, they found the door was locked. They had to break in. It was 5:30 a.m., July 12th, 2020. My phone was ringing. She wakes up, and of course, she's told from the assistant, your brother shot himself in the head.
This is Riley. So now Riley has to go find Lisa Marie.
Her mother's asleep in the hotel. She's banging on the hotel door. The hotel won't let her in because they're like, we can't let you into someone else's room without approval. And she's like screaming, trying to get her mom awake. When she comes out and tells her what happens, she says Lisa almost doesn't even process it. And they just get in a car and they drive to the house. The whole thing is sectioned off by the police because they have to look into it and make sure it wasn't like a murder.
The way Riley writes about grief of losing her brother, it got me. I mean, it's devastating. I had to lie on the floor. I couldn't hold my body up. My mom and I sat on the floor together. For 2 weeks, I couldn't really remember how to talk. I felt like I had also died. I couldn't eat. I couldn't think. I saw Ben's face in everything, everywhere.
When you do eventually cry, it's a different cry. It feels like something deeper than your emotions is crying out. It feels like it's never going to end. Some kind of terrifying, bottomless pain. So the family is, of course, in like this deep grief, and they all come together. Her father, her mother, they're all just leaving the house. And I guess in California, you're allowed to bury someone whenever you want. So they find a undertaker who will let them keep Ben's body. They keep Ben's body in the house
on ice
for like 3 months almost.
Yeah.
And she says it was really important for her mom to like have that time to grieve him. And she had that extra time with her father. She had extra time with Michael Jackson. Like, this is just the way she knew how to process her grief. And Lisa even says, I don't know, there's something very comforting to me. Like, there was all these things they had to do to keep his body from decomposing, like keeping it at a certain temperature, keeping it on ice. And she was like, being able to take care of him in this way gave me time to like mother him still while I processed that he was gone before I was ready to lay him to rest. And she couldn't decide where to lay him. She didn't know if it should be Hawaii or Memphis. They ultimately did bury him in Graceland next to his grandfather.
It's really hard watching Riley process losing her brother and just like what she had missed. She felt very responsible for the entire family, and the fact that she didn't know that he had been like thinking of suicide.
Apparently he had said to Lisa a few weeks earlier, you know, something's wrong with my mental health. I think I have mental health problems. And Lisa never told Riley. And I think Riley's like, if I had just known. But of course,
no, you couldn't have.
You can't blame yourself.
She keeps on thinking that like he just didn't mean to. It was just a moment where he was drunk and he acted on a whim.
When Ben died, I thought it would be a matter of hours until my mother relapsed, but she surprised me and remained completely sober to honor him. She really wanted to get her life together and to help others somehow. She wanted to be of service, but she was too broken.
Ben's funeral was the most brutalizing day of my life. I simply was not there. I had to dissociate and my spirit left my body again.
Yeah, she talks about the funeral and, I mean, just like the grief and how hard it was.
Grief is always there.
Her daughter Tupelo was born in August 2022 via surrogate, and her mom became obsessed with her. And it was like a small window of joy in their life. Something really sweet is her mother and father would come and do the night shift from 8 p.m. to 1 a.m. every day so that her and her husband, Ben, could get some sleep. And she's like, just like I did for my mom. It's very sweet how close they are, but it's a lot. It is so crazy to think that like your daughter would help you. Do you know what I mean? Like the way that they're such equals. And in some ways, Riley is expected to take care of the family, but Lisa does what she can.
After Ben died, I knew my mom wouldn't survive it for very long. She did not want to be here.
Lisa says, I'm still only 14 months out. I'm not crying all day every day or locking myself in my room all day and not coming out. I've made baby steps. I'm able to have a conversation and not feel like I'm losing my mind. I can think better now. For a long time, I couldn't think at all. How do I heal? By helping people. One kid wrote to Riley and said, I didn't kill myself last night because of what you said it would do to my family and those that are left behind. So thank you. I'll find some other way. That helped me. That brought me up.
Riley writes, we all knew that my mom would die of a broken heart. Lisa Marie also writes about how there's just been a sadness within her entire life. People who would take photos of the family would say, Lisa Marie always looks so sad. The sadness started at 9 when he passed away and it never left. Grief settles. It's not something you overcome. It's something that you live with.
You adapt to it. Nothing about you is who you were. Nothing about how or what I used to think is important. The truth is that I don't remember who I was. The other day, somebody said, I know you better than anyone. And I said, no, you don't. You don't have a fucking clue who I am because I don't even know who the fuck I am anymore. The real me, whoever I had been, detonated completely a year and a half ago.
I have 3 remaining children, so I fight it, but it's fucking there, alive and well. It's a lion's roar, and I have to shut it down, shut it up. I'm surprised I'm still alive. I can't believe I'm still standing. It feels wrong to be alive without Ben.
If I look back at everything my whole life, I can just lose it. Try, fail, good, bad, fail. I get really overwhelmed and start crying, looking at how fucked up my life has been. Sometimes it feels like there's nothing left, no purpose. Like there's nothing I want to accomplish anymore. No goal, no anything, zero.
I know Ben would be infuriated with me if I died and joined him. He'd be mad at me in heaven or hell or wherever.
And then she says, what's the point of an autobiography? I was thinking my main objective would be to help other people somehow or to shed light on something, make a difference somewhere somehow. I think people have gone through some of these same things I have. And maybe they'll say that really helped me. Or maybe they will say, holy shit, I can't believe you survived that. I can't believe you're still alive. The last chapter is kind of Riley just remembering the end. And she says
she tried to book a really lovely Christmas for everyone, but Lisa Marie doesn't get a passport in time, so they can't go to Canada.
And she feels like that was kind of the end of things. When it fell through, I swear something changed. She seemed resigned to something as though she wasn't going to find the joy she once felt here anymore. And so Riley is up in Vancouver shooting a TV show, and she gets a text being like, something's wrong with your mom. And she gets immediately on a flight, and her dad is texting her.
At 5:19, she's still in the air and he says, "Can you call me? I'm on the plane." At 5:20, I wrote, "Is she dying?" My dad didn't respond for 4 minutes. I wrote again, "Did she die?"
And he says, "She passed away a few minutes ago, honey. Didn't want to tell you by text, but I'm worried it's going to hit the papers. I love you so much. I'm really sorry to tell you like this. I don't want you to be blindsided when you get off the plane." My father was my mom's biggest protector throughout her whole adult life. She had many friends that came and went, but he was there from when she was 17 until the moment she died. He was the last person with her.
The world I'd taken off from in Canada that morning was not the same one I landed in at LAX that night. I didn't recognize the strange new planet. I wondered how many times a heart can break.
The whole book ends with a letter that Riley had her husband read at her mom's funeral. "Thank you for showing me that love is the only thing that matters in this life. I hope I can love my daughter the way you loved me, the way you loved my brother and my sisters. Thank you for giving me my strength, my heart, my empathy, my courage, my sense of humor, my manners, my temper, my wildness, my tenacity. I'm a product of your heart. My sisters are a product of your heart. My brother is a product of your heart. We are you, you are us, my eternal love. I hope you finally know how loved you were here. Thank you for trying so hard for us. If I didn't tell you every day, thank you."
We laid her to rest next to my brother across from her father.
Okay, this book really got me.
I know. I mean, it was very sweet. It's very sad. One thing that I always talked about with an ex of mine is like who teaches you how to do life. They were both so unprepared and like watching people try and fight to like function. Like they had so many tools that people like beg for, but they had none of the like capabilities. And watching Riley just kind of figure out how to ground everyone is like devastating.
I think something very beautiful and hopeful about this story is like looking at Riley's kind of delusion about her childhood and be like, we had a perfect childhood. Like, okay, you did not have a perfect childhood. That's like crazy to say. There's people who had much stabler, healthier childhoods than you that would still be like, I didn't have a perfect childhood. But I think it really speaks to like the importance of just loving your children, even if you're not a perfect parent, because I feel like the one thing Lisa successfully did was make her children feel so loved, or make Riley feel so loved. And that seems to have saved her despite how insane everything around it was.
Yeah.
I mean, those addiction genes are tough to beat, but I guess Riley is lucky she didn't really I mean, she's been able to survive, but I really thought it was important to see the other side of Lisa, because I wonder how different we would have felt about Lisa Marie if we had only heard her perspective.
Yeah.
And I did think it was so sweet to like balance her out with Riley's just like unconditional love of her mom and like how much she looked up to her.
Yeah.
And I thought it was a really great, beautiful counterpoint that maybe is missing in a lot of memoirs. It's interesting, like your perspective of your own life. Is it necessarily like what your life is? Do you know what I mean?
But also it is, because it's your life. And so if that's what you think of it, then that's what it is.
Yeah, like what's a truer reflection of who you've been, your memoir or your biography? Something about this book was so honest and like how the money doesn't save you.
Yeah. Like there's just so much tragedy that you can't avoid no matter how rich you are. In fact, that might be what leads to the tragedy.
Ashley, how fertile would you say is the soil?
You know, I would say like 3.5.
I would go higher. I'll give it a 4.25, I think.
Okay.
And then would you like to have any drinks with anybody?
No, I'm happy to observe.
I'm happy to cheers to Riley from a distance.
I'm absolutely rooting for Riley from here
I like can't believe the way that I've become a Riley Keough stan.
Yeah.
On that note, thank you so much, especially to who?
To our 5-star reviewing wormies. Support for Celebrity Memoir Book Club comes from Expedia. Get creative with your next vacation with Unpack 25, a list from Expedia, Hotels.com, and Vrbo outlining the best travel destinations for 2025 and outlining your dream trip. With the Goods Getaways itineraries, you can go straight to the source of your favorite things from all over the world. So if you are so into Scandinavian design, you can get straight to the source to find the most incredible collector's items.
I want you to be careful, though. I just saw online that everybody in Scandinavia is really hot in dress as well. So just be careful.
Be so careful. But if you're interested in collecting a vibe that is hot and well-dressed.
If you've been practicing at home and you think you're ready to go next level, head on over to Scandinavia.
It's a great way to embrace the spirit of travel and really get to know where you're going and bring a piece of it home with you. You can explore travel trends and find yours somewhere to look forward to at expedia.com/unpack25.